Good morning. This is the first head-to-head talk at Show Studio, and I'm Mimma Viglezio, a creative consultant.
Good morning, I'm Colin McDowell.
Hello, Colin.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm very well. How
Good.
are you?
Very well indeed.
Good. So happy to be here with you.
And
So
I'm with
apparently
you.
we're discussing Marc Jacobs' show
Yes.
that took place in New York last night.
Last night, yes.
Have you seen it?
I have.
Good. So you must have seen that he was a sort of ode to your good friend Diana Friedman.
Yes, I'm glad you've used the word sort of, because the pictures I've seen are absolutely the wrong colour, and she was obsessed with the right red.
Yeah, but probably there the colour was right.
I doubt it.
That's computer.
But let's be kind and say, and it was also terribly streamlined, and hers was all higgledy-piggledy all over the place, you know. There wasn't a space for your eye to rest, because I used to think how different it was from her magazine, which was clean and beautiful, and just say a double spread with one letter on and everything. And yet the way she lived was really quite different.
So was it all red?
Everything.
And was it a bit scary?
No.
Because I read a few reviews this morning, and people are saying that the show was scary, from the pounding music to the set, which was very heavy.
Well, I think that this show is quite scary, but what I would say is it has nothing to do with Diana Vreeland. It reminds me of what she once said to me, and she said, you should not tell anybody this, but it was a long time ago, and besides the lady's dead, as they say in a certain play of Marlowe's, but I can't remember which. I said, what do you think of American fashion, Mrs. Vreeland? 'Cause I always called her Mrs. Vreeland because I was very young. And she looked at me with that hawk eye. She was terribly like a bird. Said, what American fashion? And I said, well, Calvin Klein,
That's very
Ralph Lauren.
interesting.
You know, these are the big names at that time. She just said, turned away and said, there is no American fashion.
Is that
New
what she
York is
said?
trade.
Well,
But there's not enough trade in that. How many clothes are
hold
going
on.
to
We
be
go to the
sold
show
there?
soon, but I
Yeah.
sort of agree. I think New York is trade today, still.
I think it
If
actually
you compare it
always
to
was.
London or Paris,
Yes.
I think New York and Milan are probably the
Yes.
most trade in the fashion industry.
I think so. They were set up as trade. They were set up to make money out of clothes, whereas France developed, Paris developed
The
out of
spectacle of
a
fashion.
desire to make women look beautiful and elegant and live a certain life, which of course has now gone completely. And we sort of tagged along, the Brits. We didn't quite know what we had. In those days, women were still, the people who bought clothes when Diana Vreeland was alive were women who were elegant, and that was what they wanted to be, and they were of a certain age. What London's done, of course, is to bring the whole age right down, so young kids can look terrific. They won't look elegant, but they can look absolutely
I think there is a
magnificent.
discussion between cool and elegant and terrific today, where
yeah.
I think in New York you still have those women, the typical Park Avenue rich wives that are dressing up. Here, they are a little bit laughed at. People that dress up to go for a dinner. Sometimes you think, oh, isn't she a little bit overdressed? And I would
Absolutely.
love to know what Mrs. How did you call her?
Mrs. Vreeland.
Mrs. Vreeland would think about that today. But back to Marc and
Yes,
his
let's
obsession
go back
with
to
her.
Marc.
One thing he said, and that's what he wanted to do in his show, is that he loved the idea of, I need to have it now. I mean, I'm dying for it now, talking about a garment or an accessory, or I couldn't be caught dead in it. So to go from one to the other with the same look. And we will see the show. I think it's very much true for that.
Right.
Maybe I wouldn't be caught dead in it, but let's go there.
Let's see the show.
Sooner. But did she really think like that about fashion? Like it has to be discussed upon, so you need to hate it or adore it. Whatever is in the middle, it's mediocre, and I'm not interested in it.
Vreeland?
That's what Marc Jacobs said that she
Oh
said.
no, she had her own view of fashion and everything else didn't count. She wasn't interested in Italy at all. England didn't exist then. She was only interested in Paris, and preeminently Balenciaga and Chanel.
But did she really think that you had to hate it or love it, and whatever
Well,
in between was mediocre?
Yes, I think that she was all about passion.
Yeah.
You have to passionately
I love
be
that.
involved with something, you know. But you must remember, she was one of the world's great actresses and one of the world's greatest ad-libbers. She could throw brilliant lines off the top of her head and then say something 25 minutes later which might slightly contradict it, you know. And that's what I loved about her. Her mind was moving all the time.
So when Marc says she was changing her mind in the same sentence, it's pretty true.
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
he put it on his show saying this clothes will be either adored, worshipped, or hated.
Which I think she would love. Because, as I say, she wanted passion, she wanted conviction. What is the kiss of death to any creative thing is not caring at all, just thinking, oh, well, yeah, it's all right, you know.
Mediocrity.
I quite enjoyed it, but, you know, I think that all creators want people to come out aflame with rage or with joy.
Yeah, that's what Marc said in his backstage
Really,
interview.
really.
I'm not interested in fine. Fine is not enough. It's either outstanding or horrible.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you take the chance, some people will be with you on the horrible side, and some people will be on the great side. I think that if you take that sort of creative chance, there is no in between. You can't have any. I quite like that one. Already, am I allowed to say what I feel yet? No, I won't say what I feel yet.
Well, let's
I
show
made
picture,
my
but
mind
give me
up immediately.
Another minute, because I would be very much interested in us discussing a little bit Marc as a designer, and he's, you know,
This is where you come in. You know him very well.
No, no, because I do know him a little bit, because I worked with him at Louis Vuitton for a year, which wasn't the best year of my life. We never really became friends. We were not very close, just to put it like that.
But
and
you were able to observe him closely.
Well, I was able to observe him. He was in the much heavier, much, you know, not very healthy phase. So he was dressed down. He wasn't taking care of himself. He was a little bit always angry, but he was also at the phase where he was renewing his contract with Mr. Arnault, and so he had done like 4 years, paid okay, and putting Vuitton where it was going back to be. Like it or not, he did a good job for it. And then
Absolutely.
it was, that year, it was 2004, he was rediscussing the next phase, and that's when then he started making a hell of a lot of money and whatever. So we never really had a relationship. I had serious problem in wearing what he was designing, because I was communication director of Vuitton, so I had to wear Vuitton, and it wasn't me. It's a bit too girly, it's a little bit too not minimal enough, and it didn't really fit my body, but that apart, so I had problems. I think it felt that I wasn't really the kind of woman he preferred, and so we didn't really work together. But we had once or twice a discussion, just him and I, without his harem around, and we respected each other, I think, intellectually. And so that's what I know about Marc. What he does now and what he's done, I have huge respect. I think he's one of those designers that makes history of fashion. Do I like what he do personally? No, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, personal taste doesn't matter. No.
I mean, I remember the last show, the spring show before this one, where it was obsessively the same look coming out in different color and shape, and it was that military look, and it looks pretty on those models, but then I've seen some women wearing it on the backstage of this show, and it just doesn't look good. So I think that Marc designs for a certain body, and if you don't have that body, it's very difficult. Like I've worked with Lee McQueen, and I think what he designed was, you know, you were looking at it, say, "Oh, I would never wear that," and then you would put it on and say, "I will never take it off again," because it was designing for women's body. So exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think this is all very interesting, and I agree with virtually everything you've said. What I want to know really is, when you were having your closer moments with Marc, did you feel that he was a genius in the way that certainly you couldn't be in McQueen's or John Galliano's orbit territory without feeling this man's either totally mad or is he a genius? Or is he just another 7th Avenue designer?
I think in the middle. I think I think it's unfair to say just another, designer, stylist, whatever we call them when we don't think they're geniuses. I think he's not Lee or John. I never worked with John, but I can imagine. It's very difficult for me to say because I never really had access to his genius, if he had one. I never really had a fight with him. I think for him I was fine, so exactly what he hates. In between, mediocre. And so he didn't, he was, and he had Camille Micheli around him who wanted me dead. So whenever he was approaching me, I was cut off. So it was and my relationship with Tom and my year in Paris was very difficult. I was very unhappy. I left after 9 months. It was a whatever. And I went to the competition. So anyway, so it's very difficult for me. But I can tell you one thing. I bumped into Marc in Venice 5 years after I left. And he was looking at me from far, and I was sure he wouldn't even remember me. And he came to me. And I said, "Oh, Marc, do you remember me?" He said, "Of course I do, Mimma." So,
Lovely.
There was something that stayed there. But let's talk about his path as a designer. Did you see any, do you think he's a genius?
No, I think he's very, very clever. But I think he's too erratic to be a genius. Genius, I mean, for example, if you think of Leonardo, you recognize Leonardo no matter where it is.
Yes.
He doesn't jump from one idea to another or one technique to another. I think he's very, very clever, and I think he's very focused at times, but he sometimes focuses on too many things at the same time. But no, genius not.
Okay.
He's it's unkind to say he's a good bread and butter sort of designer.
Don't you think he's smart?
Oh, very, very, very smart, certainly. In that American way, How many will this sell? That's what's going on.
Well, when I was, the little time I had with him, it was dismissing that a little bit. Like, that's not my problem.
Well, also Paris, yes.
But also it was Vuitton, and it would sell a lot anyway. So.
Sure. I mean, there's a sort of grandeur to Paris. They think, well, if people don't want to buy, we can always sell perfume or whatever, But I think that I'm always very interested in America. I can't bother to go to America now because I can't bear New York. I think New York is the least friendly city in the whole world to visitors.
For your ears already.
And everything. That ludicrous thing they have where all the taxis swap over at the same time.
Yeah, at 4
so
o'clock.
It's lashing with rain,
it's hell.
and you cannot get a
4
taxi.
o'clock, it's hell.
And they expect people to come and spend their money there as tourists. It's ridiculous. I don't suppose I'll ever go back.
Okay, so maybe shall we look at the
Let's look at some clothes.
Can we have a look at the show, please? So, it's been said that with this show, Marc marked his comeback. So it was like a finger to the press that criticized him and said he's gone, he's dead. And I can understand that, because when people will see it now, they will see how he put it all in. And I think it tiny bit overdid it, but
Right.
I mean, it started quite calmly, but then it went all over the place. Exactly as you said, he doesn't have a precise point of view.
No, what I think he does do a lot and always has is sort of say to us, I can do it and therefore I will. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't link with anything else. I just feel I want to do this to show you that I can do this.
I think that's who Marc Jacobs is. I think that's who his personality
is. That his personality?
If you read his reaction or his interviews, and I keep saying he's very clever, but how he reacts to things, how he talks to people, that's who he is. Like, I do what I want. And I love it until I hate it, and so I will change my mind, and I have the right to do that.
Yes, sure. What I think is the problem, Mimma, in a way, is it's what I want. I'll do it because I want to, now. And it's too instant, maybe. I wonder how much time he actually spends crafting a statement.
That's a very interesting point, because is there a statement? I mean, I must say that in whatever we will see now, and it will change again and again, there is something that reminds me of him. But this could be a Louis Vuitton show at the Marc Jacobs era. So in a way, that's what he is. That's what reminds me of him, some very complicated fabrics, and the wealth, the possibilities, the richness of it. So there is a lot of Marc Jacobs, of course, but yeah, it's quite true. If you take this show and the last season show, there's nothing in between.
No. I'm just wondering, who's going to buy these clothes? They don't seem to me to be quintessentially American. I can't see those sophisticated American women that we were talking about earlier.
Park Avenue?
Wearing, because it's really very heavy. And once or twice I thought, wow,
it's getting heavier.
That's really clumsy, you know?
But you know, but that's a good point, because when I was watching at this just before we went live, I thought this for me looks more Paris Louis Vuitton by Marc Jacobs than Marc Jacobs, because I'm not a Marc Jacobs client. It's not what I usually wear, but it's quite cool. It's quite this, you know, a cool side of New York, the American, you know, lower New York, whatever. And this doesn't look like that at all.
No.
So I don't know. Marc does what he wants when he wants. Well, I mean, Marc Jacobs is doing pretty well financially, the company.
Sure,
so I don't think. I do think they have people that love them no matter what.
There are things like this which are...
It's very beautiful.
They're very beautiful. They're just the wrong side of elegance. There's just a little bit too much.
Can you define
happening.
that better?
Yeah, a little bit too... You know, the shape was lovely, the proportions were correct, but there were all sorts of funny little blobby things on which did nothing to improve the dress. But maybe you have to now have this sort of embellishment, this sparkle, in order to sell to the new customer. Sparkle is one of the things that's really, sparkle for day is one of the things that's really come in the last 10 years. This is terrifying.
But I mean, it's, again, very interesting. I'm picking up on what you say, Colin. But this show, for me, goes against all the trends that we've seen so far.
That is right and proper. A major designer should be setting a trend himself. I was worried to see there were little touches of yet again, the ubiquitous little Chanel jacket. You know, what's he doing playing around with Chanel jackets, for God's sake? He's got too much talent for that, surely.
But so that's very good that he did something in that sense.
That's to sell.
We applaud what he did, because this is nothing that we've seen in any trends. And I don't know, we haven't seen Paris and Milan yet, or London, but I guess London is very different. But
totally.
But I have another anecdote on my time with Marc Jacobs. I remember
please,
once
tell.
He was showing the collection before the show to Vanessa Friedman, and Mr. Arnault was there with, again, his entourage. I don't remember who was the woman who said what I'm going to say, either his wife or one of his, you know, Lanciaux, you know, those people that were ever with him. And someone said, oh, round shoes or pointy shoes. Now I don't remember. Is this trendy? Is it in fashion? And Marc looked at her and said, well, I make fashion.
Exactly.
I decide what's trendy. And there was a silence, and I thought, well said, because people are a little bit thinking, oh, I know what's in fashion, and then they don't realize that the next season, designers are supposed to create fashions and trends.
Exactly that.
But the problem is that doesn't
Can
really
I
happen.
stop you? Look at that. Who on earth would wear that?
And style
what
like that,
is that
even
about?
worse. Yeah.
What is this little section about?
But is this Mrs. Freeland?
Oh, she wore Yves Saint Laurent, black cashmere, grey pants, and beautiful silk blouses like your blouse. That was what she wore.
Oh, really?
Oh, she never did. She talked a lot about gala, being gala and sort of dress. She didn't do it herself.
So she wouldn't over-accessorize.
She wouldn't touch any of this.
No,
her accessories were all her bracelets, bangles.
Exactly,
they made the most terrifying. She was always doing this. And you must understand, dong, and they all came clattering down.
I
was so young.
Noise of jewelry. I love women that make noise with their jewelry.
Yes,
love it.
One of the things that's gone out of fashion is the noise of clothes. If you read 19th century novels and books, the swish of taffeta and things was really a very erotic thing. Now with all synthetic additions and everything, it's all silent, and it's such a pity, because that's one of the ways of seduction which has gone by.
The noise of the clothes. I usually think of the noise of jewelry, but yeah, it's right what you say. But also, look at this. I mean,
I'm looking
is
at
it in the same show? Well, I'm going to say something really bad, and Mark, forgive me, but I think it's a tiny bit old-fashioned. So he would tell me I decide what's in fashion, but it's a little bit, it's not vintage, it's a little bit unrelevant. That's what I want to say, non-relevant.
Yes, I think that there is a quaint old-fashioned quality to it. You know, I think you might have been looking at a few Edwardian books of life in New York in the turn of the century or something, you know. Now this worries me. I mean, no sophisticated woman is going to wear that. On the other hand, there are a lot of non-sophisticated women with a lot of money who will buy this. Of course, he does have to be commercial, but does he need to put them on the runway?
Well, I think this is very Mark saying, I do what I want, I have it all, I can put whatever I want on the runway, I can, you know, be outrageous, and he's being outrageous. There's some, I mean, that coat is spectacularly beautiful. I think the boots will sell. Have you noticed the boots?
Yes, I have.
They're very beautiful,
yes.
And they will have a cult following. I mean, some gowns are very interesting. It's a little bit Downton Abbey costumey in a way, which
that's
I
interesting.
like. I like to look back sometimes to some, you know, shapes that were very chic, but I don't want it to look costume.
I don't see much Downton Abbey in this myself, but I only ever watched one of the Downton Abbey things. I thought it was so boring, I switched it off. But now this actually is much more Downton, that sort of shimmery silver one. Good God.
Yeah, the makeup is scary.
Terrible.
And apparently he casted very tall models. Most of them are unknown, but they're extremely tall because he wanted, did you look at the back of this hairstyle, he wanted those neck to go up even too much. A little bit what Tom did with legs last season.
Yes,
remember those extra long season? He's doing with the necks and the backs. And there's no celebrity models in there except Kendall Jenner. But they're all very tall and they all have scarily long necks. And so that's how, you know, that's apparently that painting was in Mrs. Vreeland's home apartment. Probably you don't remember that.
Maybe that is a painting of her apartment. I think that long red sofa.
Possibly.
Yes, that is her drawing room.
The music is a little bit the Family Adams. I mean, it's a tiny bit scary.
Yes.
So everything is a bit nerve-wracking.
Dark.
And, yeah.
Yes.
And remember last season he did this pink house with that military obsessive look. So there is a little bit of a obsession to him.
To go back to the thing I said earlier about Leonardo, what worries me now with fashion is each new season is a jump into the unknown. There is no development. Balenciaga was once asked by an American journalist, he very, very rarely spoke to journalists, and he was caught by her.
Sorry, I didn't understand who? Who?
Balenciaga.
Oh, Balenciaga. Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, Mr. Balenciaga, what are your new modes for spring?" And he looked at her and said, "Madam, I have no new modes," and just walked away. Because, of course, to him, it was one long line of development. He started here, he was here, he knew eventually he was going to get there.
So, like, an idea was bringing another idea on?
Yes, exactly. It was all the same vision. That, I think, is what's gone from fashion now. The controlled vision. We actually got it most of all in John Galliano, where it became terribly boring, unfortunately, because it was those huge skirts and everything. And of course, Lee McQueen.
But I don't know if you read the piece, I think by Cathy Orin, about the death of Trent.
No, I didn't. I don't read other
magazine.
Journalists, actually, normally speaking.
Well, I did read it because I thought it was interesting.
She's a very good commentator.
She's a very good writer. And it was about the fact that today there's no trends any longer, which means that everything goes and everything can be copied and everything can be styled in a different way. And that's also, I think, the answer to the social era where everybody's being photographed, everybody becomes a celebrity on their Instagram, and so everybody wants to be quite personable in what they wear. And so the trends are made by the people and not by these people.
I think that's true. I wouldn't say entirely. I think there is very definitely a move for, yes, because women who bought fashion in the great days of couture, for example, Their main object was to not let anybody know that they had bought that particular dress until they wore it in a closed group. I mean,
and God forbid someone else was wearing the same designer even, right?
Well, they were certainly never allowed to wear the same dress.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but honestly, Colin, I mean, this is so another time. I mean, fashion at that time was for 10 people in the world. Now we all wear fashion, be it expensive or not, and we all want to look a certain look. And so I think that the role of designers today, unless they're geniuses like Lee or John, the role of design, or Miuccia, I think she can be up there, their role is a different role. It's probably, you know, again, to tell us what we don't know we want.
Well, I think we all want something newish, and we want something modern. But you see, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, will young women find this modern? Will the people who copy these ideas for young women at a cheaper level find something that they can make modern?
I don't think modern goes with this show.
So,
unfortunately,
you know,
and I feel it's also a reaction to what Louis Vuitton is today, because you can love or not what Nicolas Ghesquière is doing, but one thing you cannot deny is its modernity.
Absolutely.
But not modern only in the cuts, in the fabrics, but also in the way it's displayed, in the whole communication around it. I think Nicolas is modern with a capital M, and that's Marc Jacobs' reaction.
Yes.
I may say something.
No, I think it's probably true. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the press has reacted today to this thing. I think his hand with fur is so clunky. Do you know that word?
Yes.
Heavy and
clunky, yes.
And absolutely lacking in style totally. I think if I were giving him any advice, that's the Chanel sort of pastiche, which I think is frightful. If I were giving him any advice, and why the hell should he listen to me? He's very much cleverer than I would say, Marc, lay off the furs.
Lay off the furs. So that's
your
your
don't
take
think he
to this.
Gets fur.
Okay. And what about the styling, and what about the set, and what about the mood? Because I would tell him, be a designer that you can be, but probably don't be so moody.
Well, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with being moody if it's the right mood. But you know, look at this. Can we stop those for a second? Look at the.
Can we show look 22?
Look at this split.
Or
yes,
split, yeah.
Isn't there a split personality there? I mean, look at those three. I mean,
but there is a thread. I mean, there is a fil rouge.
Well, it's the silvery crisscross stuff, you know. But I think that 22 is really the sort of thing you would expect to find in a graduate fashion
But
show.
it's as if Marc Jacobs suddenly is for the Bergdorf Goodman lady and not for the 22 years old Bowery, whatever.
Who knows? Who knows? But I mean,
that's going to be very expensive as well.
Yes. I've got a feeling 22 will be photographed a lot.
Look 22?
Yes, unfortunately. I think it will. I think that I can feel little stylists squealing with delight.
Do you think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You don't seem to have huge respect for the squealing stylists.
Squealing,
what you just said.
Squealing nobody, but I have a great deal of respect for the good stylists,
yes.
You know. But there are an awful lot who think, well, as I think he does half the time, let's do it because we can, you know.
Yeah. Well,
magazines now are sometimes a truly painful experience for the visually delicate or aware. You know, they do the most extraordinary things which have nothing to do with the ethos of fashion, what is behind fashion. If I can just say something which will probably embarrass him terribly, but I'm going to tell the world this. Last week in the Sunday Times, there was a piece about Gareth Pugh, a designer I admire enormously. The pictures by our dear friend Nick Knight were fabulous. People who were not fashion people were phoning, no, ordinary people. I live in the countryside, I'm surrounded by sheep farmers and things, were ringing me and saying, who's this Nick Knight fellow? So, of course, I know he's nothing really, but do you like the pictures? And they said, they're incredible, I've never seen anything like that.
So they understood them?
They were
so your farmers so understood Nick Knight?
So exciting.
Well, that's an ode to the talent of
absolutely.
But we can't
We need
conclude
a
like
bit-
this because it sounds a little bit brown since
We must thank our
we're on
sponsor.
show studio. Yeah, it's like he's going to call us back. So we
No,
can't
well, I did
finish
apologise for doing it,
But,
and he'll be deeply embarrassed. But I just feel that this is a million miles away from.
Okay,
that
so
thing.
give me something to wrap this up. I mean, but about Marc and about what you think, exactly what you said, you know, why, I mean, for me, the word for me is this is not really relevant, or I don't understand its relevance. And that would be my conclusion. What would be yours?
My feeling is I would go back to, I think it's clunky, I think it's heavy, and I think that it's malformed. I would like him to go back to this and refine it and really say to himself, what was I trying to do? On the other hand, I can see quite a lot of clothes here that will sell very well, and I can see some ones that are very easy to rip off. And that's really what most of the people who are looking at shows like this, they want to know. You know, young girls who cannot afford those prices are thinking, oh, I wonder if Topshop will do that, or
The
whoever,
pink
you
coat.
know?
Yeah. Well, will your farmers' friends love this? Will
This?
they understand this?
I don't know.
Like they did Gary Pugh?
I don't know. I think that their wives might.
Okay.
There's not much style in the English countryside, one has to say, but they understood the power
That's very
of the
interesting.
picture. Not only the picture, but of Gareth Pugh, who actually is one of the gentlest and most charming and diffident people you could ever talk to. He is, I think, a genius, and I really feel that it's high time the world was leaping up and down and shouting, yes, he is a genius, you know. We've lost Lee. John, we don't quite know what the position is with him yet.
Well,
But
let's give it some time.
Gareth Pugh is an amazing man.
Good. Shall we conclude on this?
Well, I think it's probably a little unfair to Mark. Let's say that we found it interesting to look at this.
Oh, it was very interesting, and it will have a lot to discuss about, which is
Yes.
good, especially for our talk.
Yes. Can we look at him again as he came out? He looked very cleaned up, Mark. I thought.
That's what he's been looking for the past years, no?
Well, I just thought there was something
Like
different
black
about
suit
him.
and
No, it was his, maybe it was his
and
demeanour, the way he walked out.
sneaker
It doesn't matter
white
if we can't find it, it doesn't matter, but no, okay.
But that reminds me of the way he's looked recently, which is a very clean yet modern
All right,
look.
okay.
Well, thank you for this
Mimma,
lovely
it's
chat.
been great. I've enjoyed
It's
it
been
very
great,
much indeed.
and hope to see you soon.